Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us on this Thursday evening. I'm so excited to see so many of you already joining us and ready to listen to a wonderful book talk. I have to be truly honest and just say a sincere thank you to everyone who has been joining us over this time. It's been something that, Tattered Cover is known as a community space. Something that we come together and enjoy reading and literacy and promoting learning. And we're not able to physically come together and do that, but we've been able to transfer that community online and create this virtual community for ourselves and each other's during these harrowing times. And so I just want to say thank you for continuing to join us and for being supportive of local independent bookstores, local authors, as we have in this case. And we're just really excited that we continue to do this, and that's because of your support. That's because you purchased the books from your local independent bookstore, and we're able to bring you amazing events like this one. Just to let you know, I don't think I introduced myself. I'm McKaylee. I'm with Tattered Cover. And so just to let you know a little bit about Tattered Cover, for those of you who may be watching from elsewhere in the country, Tattered Cover is based in the Denver metro area in Colorado. We have 4 locations, all of which are open to the public right now. So just come on in and bring your mask and wear it for us over your nose and your mouth. And you can come and shop for about 90 minutes or so in any of our stores. We're really excited because 2 out of the 4 are open 7 days a week right now, which is awesome. But if you want to stay home and shop in your pajamas, then please feel free to do so on our website at tattercover.com, which is open 24/7. And also, just so you're aware, for this particular live stream, as well as all of our other YouTube live streams, closed captioning is enabled for those who might need it. So you can just click on the screen that you're watching me on right now, hover your mouse over it. There's a little button that says CC down at the bottom. Click that and closed captioning will be enabled. And that's all it for my housekeeping things. Let's get into who we're talking to today, which I'm personally very excited about because I don't know if you guys know this, but the book we're talking about today, Winter Counts, is actually Tattered Cover's September book of the month. It came out at the end of August, and it's such a perfect pick. Not only does it have Denver and Colfax specifically as one of its central locations, but it's just such a wonderful, intriguing, awesome noir. And I can't wait to talk about it with these 2 authors that we have here today. So we have Stephen Graham Jones, who is going to be moderating the conversation. Stephen Graham Jones has been an NEA Fellowship recipient. He's won Jesse Jones Award for Best Work of Fiction from Texas Institute of Letters, the Independent Publishers Award for Multicultural Fiction, a Bram Stoker Award, for this horror awards, as in count them 4, has been a finalist for the Shirley Jackson Award and the World Fantasy Award. He is the Ivina Baldwin Professor of English at University of Colorado Boulder. And then I want to talk about our author of the hour, David Heska Wanbli Weiden. He is an enrolled member of the Sicangu Lakota Nation. Is the author of Winter Counts and the children's book Spotted Tail, winner of the 2020 Spur Award from the Western Writers of America, and finalist for the Colorado Book Awards. His work appears in the New York Times, Shenandoah, Yellow Medicine Review, Transmotion, the Criminal Class Review, and other magazines. He's a recipient of the MacDowell Colony Fellowship, a Ragdale Foundation residency, the PEN America Writing for Justice Fellowship, was a Tin House Scholar. He received his MFA from the Institute of American Indian Arts and is a professor of Native American Studies at Metropolitan State University of Denver. And it is my honor to welcome both Stephen and David, and I'm going to have them turn on their mics and cameras now so that we can all talk. And there we go. Hello, gentlemen.
Hello.
Hey, everybody.
Hi, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, Stephen, for moderating. Thank you, David, for just celebrating this wonderful book you've gifted us with. I can't wait to hear your conversation and do the Q&A later. It's going to be so exciting.
Thank you for the wonderful introductions. Thank you for having us.
Absolutely. I'm going to pop out and let the 2 of you take over from here.
Sounds great. Thank you very much. And yeah, it's an honor to get to talk about Winter Counts. I read this back when, and then I listened to it last week, and it was just as thrilling to listen to it as it was to read it, and it's a really compelling book, and it has a lot of my favorite things in it too. I was so thrilled in this book, in this novel, to have someone else who drinks Shasta. I grew up on Shasta, Shasta and RC, and Shasta RC and Cherry RC. Those are my drinks, Can you expound upon Shasta and RC, David?
Yeah. Well, first of all, folks, I just want to say, I want to give my thanks to Tattered Cover. I've been going to Tattered Cover since I was a kid. I love it. I'm just so deeply honored to be their book of the month. And thank you to Dr. Stephen Graham Jones. He's not going to get out of here with a little plug for me. If you are not aware, this is Dr. Jones' book, All the Beautiful Sinners, which I have written about recently in Crime Reads and also the Strand magazine. And this book literally changed my life, because when I read it, it is an Indigenous crime novel, but it is fantastic. Unfortunately, this edition is not available anymore, but you have it online at Zank, is that right? Or okay, yeah. So folks, I argued in my article that Stephen Graham Jones is the direct heir to Lewis Owens, the greatest Indigenous crime writer. So there's this one. And if there's anybody left that hasn't read this, I would say you should run out and get it. So Stephen, thank you. It's such an honor. I think the last time that we saw each other was we were hanging out at the White Horse, the last Indian bar in Denver, quite a while ago, in, as we call it, the before times. So you were, you were so kind to read Winter Counts and give me a blurb, and to be with me tonight. So thank you, really, thank you.
It's an honor.
Shastacola. So I grew up in Denver, in the Swansea Elyria neighborhood. If you're from Denver, and I expect a lot of folks are, Swansea Elyria. If you don't know it, it's where the dog food factory is. When you drive by I-25 and you start getting that smell, I-70, you drive on I-70 and you get that smell. I grew up literally blocks from the dog food factory, the stockyards, and the railroad tracks. And, so we had a fairly financially challenging existence, and what we could afford was Shasta. And I loved Shasta, and I still do. And so I had to put Shasta in the book. In the book, my character, Virgil, Wounded Horse, he is obsessed with Shasta. It's his favorite drink. And thank you. I think you're the first person that has ever picked up on that. So thank you.
No, it was so great. And RC too. I was at a fancy restaurant, man, it's probably been about a year or two ago. And the waiter was asking what I want to drink. And I said, Pepsi. And cause that's what I usually get. And he said, and we don't have any Pepsi. We've got everything else you could ask for. And I was like, everything? He said, everything. I said, RC. And he said, we don't have RC. I was so heartbroken. But one of the main threads in this novel is native cooking, native cuisine. And you have that. I have to read it because I can't keep it in my head. It's so clever. Indigicultural decolonnative cuisine, which just cracked me up. I wanted to get that as a tattoo because it's so hilarious. I guess my question that I'm leading to is, have you caught any grief for someone in the novel saying that sopapillas are better than fry bread?
I have not. So because I stand by Virgil's statement. So again, for those who haven't read the book, Virgil, the book is set on the Rosebud Indian Reservation, which is where my people are from in South Dakota, and where I spent a lot of my youth. I grew up in Denver, but I spent summers on the Rosebud Indian Reservation in South Dakota. And but in the book, Virgil comes to Denver with his ex-girlfriend, and they don't know where to go eat. And somebody says, well, you need to go to Casa Bonita. And so I was delighted to throw Casa Bonita into this book, because if you're from Denver, Casa Bonita is just amazing. I've heard, though, that it is closed now, and I'm hoping that it will reopen. But Casa Bonita, look, I don't want to slander them because I personally love Casa Bonita. Their food, not great. Having said that, the sopapillas are fantastic, and everybody in Denver knows this. And so in the book, Virgil says, I have to say it, these sopapillas are better than fry bread. And I stand by that statement. Okay. So there you go.
Yeah. Well, I mean, sopapillas and fry bread, it's they're like closer than cousins. They're from the same letter, basically. Agreed. I mean, you can turn some fry bread into sopapilla pretty easy,
Agreed.
Yeah. Although, to tell you the truth, you can have an Indian taco where it's just fry bread with junk on top of it. I've never had a fry bread stuffed with something. I've had sopapillas that are stuffed with shredded chicken and stuff. Have you had those?
I've had them once or twice. I mean, usually I get the sweet sopapillas, but I've seen the taco sopapillas.
Yeah, they're pretty good, man. They surprise me. Maybe you can explain for some readers who may not know. It's somewhere. Let's see, who is it? Oh, Delia. I think I think it's Delia. She gets called a super Indian. Can you explain the whole concept of being super Indian?
Ah, okay. So now we're getting into Indian stuff tonight. Okay. So, Winter Counts, I think, hopefully has a little bit of something for everybody. For crime fiction people, you're going to get into the story and all that. Literary fiction folks, there's hopefully some, some prose and character development, but there's a lot in there for natives as well that you're probably not going to catch unless you're from the indigenous world. And part of that is the idea of being, the super Indian. So on my reservation anyway, and I don't pretend to speak for all, there's the super Indians that are usually like full-blooded and very proud of their traditions, maybe sometimes overbearing. And sometimes maybe they discriminate against those that are not completely full-blooded native. And so, yeah, so Delia makes a lot out of being a super Indian. And she, in her youth, she had taunted one of the other main characters in the book, Marie. And so in the book, there's sort of this a battle between Marie, the ex-girlfriend, and Delia, her enemy. So yeah, this is the first time I've been asked about the super Indian, which is kind of a thing in the native world.
Yeah, I was just thinking that there may be a lot of readers out there who aren't familiar with the concept. They can look it up, but they're probably going to get a comic book character or something, which will be a little bit different.
Yeah.
How difficult was it, or was it difficult at all? Virgil, he's not uneducated. He's a smart, intelligent dude, but he didn't excel at school. He didn't go for post-secondary education, any of that. You yourself a lot of stuff. You're extremely intelligent and educated both. What were the difficulties involved with making him your protagonist? Or were there difficulties? Did you have to I've done this myself, and I know I have a really hard time doing it. So I'm asking you this so I can figure out how I can navigate it easier.
Virgil, my hero. So for people that don't know, Virgil is a hired enforcer. So just a quick backstory. So the setup of the book is that there is this terrible law called the Major Crimes Act, passed in 1885, which says that Native nations can't prosecute felonies that happen on their own territories. Instead, they have to call up the FBI, the U.S. Attorney's Office, bring them in. But the U.S. Attorney's Office and the FBI are failing to prosecute about 30 to 40% of all felonies. So you've got child abusers, rapists, arsonists, thieves, and the FBI says, yeah, we don't have enough evidence, or we're not going to prosecute this, and they let them go free, where they can go out and reoffend. And imagine, you have your child hurt, assaulted, and the feds just let him go free. You're going to call up a hired enforcer, somebody that'll go out and beat them up for a fee. These people really exist on my reservation anyway. So that's my hero. Now, I am not a vigilante, nor do I plan at this point. I'd never say never, but it was hard for me initially to get into his head. He's a smart guy, I think, but he's not well educated. He doesn't have great grammar. He doesn't have a wonderful vocabulary. He's pretty profane. So I had to kind of get into his mindset. And I was also very uncomfortable with the violence. There is, fair warning, there's a lot of violence in this book. And, I'm not pro-violence. And so I just had to kind of use a version of method acting, get into, I think all writers do this. I had to get into his head and figure out, what is it like to be somebody that beats people up for a living? And he, in the book, he starts to like it too much. He starts to love just the beating so badly. He talks about maybe finding a support group for hired vigilantes, but he thinks maybe there aren't too many. So I did struggle with sort of toning down my grammar and all that. And I know you're the same way, because I think you and I have had some grammar discussions. I remember we were on a reading some months ago, and you and I were talking about having a grammar throwdown. When you're talking about a guy that's like in here, he's not really going to be talking about comma splices too much. So I did have to get into the head of somebody that's smart and street smart and savvy, but does not have a ton of education. So yeah, it took me a while to get into that for sure.
Yeah. And it's always hard to maintain it too, because you want to slip in something else,
Yeah.
But this novel doesn't slip as near as I can tell. So, great job.
Thank you.
Talking about that violence, Virgil at one point threatens someone with pulling their ear off, which I thought was definitely a hat tip to CJ Box's Nate Romanowski. Was it?
No, it was not.
Okay.
I now I'm all intrigued by this and I want to get
Yeah.
it. I do have some hidden things in there. That's not one of
Yeah.
them, I have to
Yeah.
say. I'm embarrassed now.
Well, no, I mean, Nate
Nate
Romanowski.
what's that? Go ahead, tell me.
Nate Romanowski, he's the kind of like, do you know the Joe Pike series that
do.
Robert Cray does? Yeah, like
do,
how there's Elvis, and then what's his big friend who always does the violence, Nate Romanowski is like that for CJ Box's Joe Pickett. And Nate comes in and he's very much like Virgil. He just is very physical, very violent. But when he gets mad at people, he just pulls their ears off,
I've got one of Robert Cray's books, but I right over here, but I haven't read that one. Now I'm all intrigued. I built in some hidden tributes to a Native writer, and I built in some hidden tributes to a crime writer. So I kind of threw in some clues there. I suspect that crime folks will know exactly who I've got the Easter eggs to, and I suspect that Native literature people will know on the other end. I don't know that anybody has gotten both. So I'm gonna keep quiet.
Yeah.
So
well, talking about smuggling other stuff in. Well, not. I remember when I first read this, and I was talking to you about it wherever we were. I don't remember. I got to talking to you about Hector from the Longmire television series. Anyways,
yes.
Can you do some disambiguation for us and walk us through Virgil and when Hector came into the timeline and all that?
Yeah. So I wrote Winter Counts first as a short story back in my MFA program in about 2010. I started off at a Master of Fine Arts creative writing program called the Vermont College of Fine Arts. And so I wrote a story with Virgil Wounded Horse there. Now which I did publish that story in a journal called Yellow Medicine Review. Now in that story, I kill Virgil off because I was trying to write a noir. And so I felt that he had to die. So I believe I came up with the concept first. Then about 3 or 4 years ago, I'm watching Longmire, and I'll confess that I watched the TV show before I read the books. Mm-hmm. And in comes a Native vigilante, and I'm like, oh, shoot. I had some more choice words running through my head. Is Craig Johnson going to think that I took this from him? Because I certainly didn't. And in fact, I read his books, and I could be wrong. And Craig Johnson's actually a friend of mine now. I don't think Hector appears in the books. I think he's just in the TV series. And I could be wrong. I haven't read every book in the series, but I've read about every other one. So I think it's just, great minds think alike. So that's my hope anyway.
Yeah, for sure. And Craig Johnson is such a strong writer too. He's very much like, who does James Lee Burke. He's like James Lee Burke. Yeah. He's got that same like quality to his prose or something. Really impressive. And talking side characters in this book, there's like Cheeto the bartender, whom I loved, of course, the name. And I think my favorite side character in this book is Tommy. I would read 20 books with Tommy, like just following his adventures. He is such a fun character, Yeah.
Thank you for picking up on that. So for folks who haven't read it, Tommy is sort of like the humorous sidekick, and I had more fun writing Tommy. A lot of this book is kind of dark, but I think there has to be a balance of light and dark. And so the chapters with Tommy, he's kind of silly and crazy, and those were just pure joy to write. Every time I wrote those chapters, I was just filled with happiness. I did have to cut about 10,000 words from the book. My editor made me cut, and so I cut a lot of Tommy out, which is too bad, because I was able just to bring so much in with Tommy. For example, I had an exchange in the book where Tommy claims that punk rock was invented by an indigenous Peruvian band in the 1960s called Los Psychos. And so I had that in. I had a lengthy exchange of Tommy saying that, punk rock, is native rock, man. Yeah. We invented it, but I had to cut that. Now, happily, I did bring that back. I did a playlist for this wonderful blog called Large Hearted Boy. And so I actually put a song from Los Psychos. I don't know that it's punk rock. It's kind of more surf rock to me. But Tommy was just a wonderful way to bring in like crazy stuff that I wanted to get in there. And for Denver folks that are watching this, I built in a lot of Denver stuff as well. So Tommy talks at one point about a friend that he met at a bar who who doesn't have an arm, and he had a vision, and he put it on a railroad train track, and it was cut off. So that's a piece of Denver lore. There was a comedian in the 1980s called Becker, who that's exactly what happened in Denver. He got very drunk one night. He was down in lower Denver, and he lower downtown, and he put his arms on the railroad track and cut it off. Yikes. Having said that, Don Becker continued to do comedy shows and joked about it a lot. And so he was much beloved in Denver. And I also had Tommy in the original version, which I also had to cut, talk about Father Phony. Now, anybody who's been in Denver for a while knows about Father Phony. Father Phony was this con man elderly gentleman who had a raggedy priest costume. And he would walk around Denver and with a little box and ask for money for the poor. But he was not a priest at all. He was just like making money. And so we kind of loved Father Phony, okay? And so I had Father Phony in the book, but it did get cut. So my character Tommy was a wonderful conduit to bring in just all this crazy Denver stuff that I wanted to bring in.
Yeah, he is so much fun. He is such a compelling character. I'm glad you have 10,000 words of Tommy left over, because maybe it'll become something. Maybe it'll bloom in the corner, and who knows what'll happen. You have another term in here, and I forget where it happens in here. It's snagmore. Somebody says is it a band? What are they talking about when they say snag? I love that term. I've never thought of that term. That's the most beautiful term.
Yeah. So it's snagmore is a kid that Nathan, the young one, meets in juvenile movie. So in the book, again, I don't want to give too much away. Virgil is essentially a legal guardian. He's a quasi-father to his nephew, Nathan. And for reasons that I won't disclose here, Nathan has to go to juvenile detention. And in there, he meets somebody that a kid that he used to know. And the other kid wants everybody to call him Snagmore. So now, again, if you're native, that is hilarious. If you're not native, you're probably thinking, why is Stephen laughing? So to snag would be to hook up with a member of the opposite sex. So, so I have two teenage sons, and so they're fully in like their silly humor and all that. And I grabbed as much of that as I could. For example, there's another thing in the book where Marie, her backstory is that when she was a kid, she would put on wolf ears in elementary school and howl, and the teachers would get mad. Well, that came directly from my son. So my son, David Jr., who, by the way, loves your work, Stephen. He had a friend in his elementary school out here in Highlands Ranch where I live. This girl would put on wolf ears and howl in class. And I'm just like, oh, I'm stealing that, So you see, having kids, it pays off. Okay.
Exactly. Well, I mean, the violence, the crime, the mystery, everything in here is working at, it's firing on all cylinders. But what really impressed me, and what a lot of writers miss, is the authenticity of the teenagers, because the teens are often, they're like adults who are stupid or something. And that's not the way it is. It's a different way of looking at the world, and with Nathan, you capture that and his voice so completely. He felt 100% real to me.
Well, thank you so much. And again, this is largely due to my son, David Jr., who, I usually don't bring in real people into my books, but I will fully admit here that Nathan is essentially a David Jr. So I took, he loves rap music, I'm a rock guy, but he loves rap. And so I just took everything I could from him, even the bad stuff. Now he hasn't done anything as bad as Nathan does, but I got a call 2 years ago when David was 13 in the middle of the night. He had sneaked out with his friend and broke curfew. They're wandering around Highlands Ranch, Colorado at 2 a.m. I have to go out, he's in the back of a cop car. He's probably mad at me that I'm telling this, I'm like, David, dang you, and so, but getting that call in the middle of the night is a feeling that you get when you're a parent. And so I certainly tapped into that.
Yeah, around Denver, there's the writer Mario Acevedo. he said, and Mario, you know Mario probably, and he says that when he was young, he was scared of vampires and werewolves and demons, but then he had kids, and what he got scared of was a call at 2 a.m. You know,
Oh
and
boy,
yeah,
it's terrible. I've had it a couple
yeah,
of times, and it's
yeah,
no fun.
yeah,
So
no,
thank
no,
you
for
for
sure.
the kind words about writing, Nathan. He was fun to write too, although there are some
Mhm.
chapters there. Again, I don't want to give away too much that
Yeah,
were no fun to write, but I had to live
yeah,
through. So
yeah, for sure. If you know, doing that, basing a character on someone in your own life, you know, distantly, of course. Did it make you treat that character differently, you think?
I don't know that I treated him differently.
Uh,
I still kind of put him through the ringer.
yeah,
Um, but I did definitely feel that I let my own feelings as a dad come in and color that. And so in
yeah,
the book,
uh,
Virgil is fiercely protective and very loving towards his nephew Nathan. And so,
mhm,
those are feelings that I have as a dad. So I think I was able
mhm,
to
yeah,
tap into those.
yeah. It felt completely authentic and real.
Thank you.
You know, and you did a thing. You said something in a previous answer that I realized is probably a truism of all writers or all fiction, that our characters always listen to the same music that we prize. You know, do you think that's true? Like, because you say that Virgil listens to the same music you do, and my characters always listen to the music I do. Like, I couldn't have a character listen to something I don't listen to because I don't know what it's like to listen to that stuff. You know?
No, I went the other direction. So I did. I
Oh,
actually, yeah, yeah. And indeed, if anybody cares enough, go to the
uh,
blog Large Hearted Boy, where
uh,
usually writers they do a playlist of music they
yeah,
like. I
yeah.
did a playlist of what music my characters listen to. So
Mm.
the closest musical taste that I have would be Marie. So in the book, Marie is sort of
Oh.
a former goth, she
Mhm,
looks sort of like punk music. That was
mhm,
more, my era, old school punk. Virgil likes heavy metal, which honestly is not my thing.
mhm,
I had him be a Megadeth fan.
mhm.
I had to pull up some Megadeth for the playlist. You know, it it it's not my thing. I know you like this music, right? It was something
Yeah,
called The
yeah,
Punishment or something like
yeah,
that about, and
yeah,
it was pretty brutal.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
And then rap. I had to listen to some rap for Nathan, and I pulled up
yeah.
some rap. I on the playlist. I think I did Eminem, and then I found a wonderful native rapper called Frank Walm, who's
He's so
from
good. He's
from my
amazing.
nation. And let me
Yeah.
tell you, I admit that I'm sort of a rock guy,
Mhm,
alternative rock, but I'm listening to this Frank Walm, WALN. I got
mhm.
to give a shout out here because my partner Erica turned me on to Frank Walm, and it is fantastic.
Yeah,
He
yeah.
does a rap song called "What Makes a Red Man Red," where he
Mhm, mhm.
purposes, it's Peter Pan stuff. And I'm like, okay, now I get it. Now this
Yeah,
middle-aged dad is getting the rap music. So
yeah.
so I yeah, so I sort of created a different musical taste for each one of my characters.
That's really smart to do. And talking about Frank Wong, Tanaya White, you know Tanaya, right? She's around
I do.
here. Yeah,
Yeah.
she's in one of his songs too. I was
Oh,
surprised me. You know, she's doing some spoken word stuff or something. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
No, but he's amazing. Like those of y'all who don't know him, look up his song Aboriginal. If you don't like that song, then I don't know what to tell you. You know. I like that someone in here. Oh, is it time for questions,
Oh,
Michaela?
you can ask one more. Go for it.
Okay. You mentioned the history of fry bread in here, which I never knew. I just always thought fry bread was delivered to us from the gods or something, you know. But you mentioned that it was actually like an imposition. You know, that was really eye opening.
Yeah, yeah. So there's a lot of food in this book because
Mm-hmm.
I love food and I've worked in restaurants. I mean, who doesn't, but I worked in restaurants all my life. So literally, since I was 14 years old, I've been a dishwasher, a line cook, a sous chef, a waiter, a barback,
Mm-hmm.
and so I know this really well. And so I brought in a lot of restaurant stuff in there, and including the history of fry bread. So fry bread is considered to be this really important and supreme native food, but it's not a food that we traditionally have eaten in our generations past. What it is when we were forced to reservations, the reservation agents would give our grandmothers and our great grandmothers and great great grandmothers just some oil and some flour, and they had to come up with this bread, just some flour, a pinch of baking soda, maybe a pinch of salt, fried in a lard. And it's not a traditional indigenous food, and it's actually really unhealthy for our people. the average life expectancy on my reservation for a man is 47 years old, 47, compared to, what is it? I think 78, 79 off the reservation. That's because our diets are terrible. We don't have access to good, healthy, sustainable food. Medical care is terrible on the res. And I cover a lot of these issues in the book. I mean, you and I are having a lot of fun today, but I've heard from so many readers saying, David, I didn't know about the criminal justice, the healthcare, all these things. I just didn't know about it. So it's been a real honor to kind of educate folks, but hopefully in an entertaining way.
Yeah. Yeah. People who haven't been to powwows, they don't know about that long line you stand in to buy. You don't buy a plate of fries, you buy a block of fries that's in the shape of the fryer. They just turn their fryer upside down on a plate and you have a block of fries to eat. And I always think this isn't healthy, but I keep doing it,
Block of fries. Get ready for that on the next drive-through menu. And just to reiterate, I feel very much in that group of that unfortunately was very undereducated about the state of the reservations, what goes on there, the medical care, the criminal justice system. And that was something that, yes, I was very entertained, but also you don't miss the underlying problems that are there. And I think you do an excellent job of weaving them together, and I think having Virgil as your central character is something that really, he's so intriguing because on one page he's unlikable. And then on the other page, because it's like you want to smack him. And then at the same time, you're like, oh man, you're a really good dude. And he really is a great person to show you all sides of it. So I personally very much appreciate it. And I'm sure a lot of our other readers have as well. The book's been out for a while, but you can always order a copy on tatteredcover.com. We have signed copies at our Colfax Avenue location. David kindly came up and signed some for us. But we want to open it up to Q&A to both David and Stephen, talking to them about their work, the craft, Winter Counts specifically. I know that, there have been some authors there have been some questions here about writing crime novels, writing mystery. And what does that look like when you're plotting that? What does that process look like? David, do you want to chime in and start?
Yeah, sure. So if you're going to write in genre, I think you have to really master the idea of plot, because no genre reader is usually going to put up with a plot that doesn't go anywhere. So I teach now at Western Colorado University MFA program. In addition to my regular gig as a professor at Metro State, I also teach some students at Western Colorado, which is specifically geared towards both genre writing and nature writing. And so I advise my students there to really focus on narrative structure and plot. And I have them read a book called Save the Cat, which is for screenwriters.
Yes, save.
You know it. Yeah. But oh, you've got it. Okay.
I do. I have Save the Cat by Jessica Brody, which is the novel version of it.
Yeah. Both are good. Both are good. I like the screenplay writer one, but both are really good. So if there are any emerging or, writing students out there, there you go. Saves the Cat, writes a novel. Yeah.
Wow.
It just, screenplay writers have to be so efficient with plot that studying what they do, really, I think, can help you put together a plot that really moves along, and learning how to create an A story and a B story that, will weave together. And so I love the Saves the Cat. But I'll turn it to Stephen, who has got me beat by about what are you up to book now? 35, 45? So
getting up there. Yeah. No, I assign Save the Cat as well. I tell my students that Save the Cat is, after you've written your novel, your screenplay, whatever it is, and you think something's wrong with it, I don't know what, then apply those Save the Cat beats and see what doesn't work out, because I think it's wonderful as a diagnostic tool, But yeah, talking about mystery and crime, who was it? I think Joe Lansdale maybe told me this a long time ago. He said, when you're writing a mystery, you do have to plan out when the clues are going to come, and so you have to, mystery and crime to me is the one genre where I kind of, think you do have to know what's coming. Most novels, I just figure it out as I go, sentence to sentence, but you can't do that when you're trying to stage clues, or else you end up with all the clues coming between page 140 and 160, and the rest of it's boring,
Excellent.
Yeah, no, we talked about you when Stephen joined us, which if anybody would like to see that, it's on our YouTube channel. You can see when Stephen joined us for the release of The Only Good Indians. And we had a really great conversation about how the words come to you and the way that you've worked on just putting one word in front of the other, so to speak. But I'm glad to hear you talking about mystery and how sometimes you have to plot that one out a little bit too. So it takes a little bit of both. Let's see. We have some other craft questions for both of you about voice. So, in Winter Counts, you have unique characters, and this one specifically mentions you used your sons to get into the voice of the teenager. Any other real life inspirations to get into the voices of other characters? And Stephen, maybe if you could mention a time that's happened to you in one of your books.
Well, I'll start off quickly and just say, so Winter Counts is written in first person, and I was really worried about this. So Winter Counts is pretty much 327 pages of Virgil's voice only, and it was rough, and I really did a study of first person and how to not make it boring, and I vowed after I finished this that I would never write another first person book again. However, because it's just hard to stay in the head of one person for that long. I should note, though, that I have a 2-book contract with Echo HarperCollins. And so there is, in fact, another Virgil Wounded Horse book coming. It'll be, I have to deliver it just months from now, which is freaking me out. But it is coming for sure. So I'm going to turn the question over to Stephen, who I would argue is the master of voice. If you don't know some of his short stories, I'll embarrass him once again. Is it Father, Son, Holy Rabbit? Is that the name of the story? Folks, I've been arguing for a long time that that's one of the great short stories in the English language, and I'm not going to give it away. So you want to talk about a man who writes horror, who writes crime, who writes traditional short stories, who's done memoir. So I feel just honored to be in the presence here. So I'm going to let him speak to voice.
Well, thank you very much. Thanks for remembering that old story too. Voice is the hardest thing to teach to beginning students, because voice, like, people want to say it's just diction, but it's not diction. It's like angle of entry. It's the expositional apparatus that the story has to tell itself, if that makes sense. And yeah, David's completely right. First person is hard to maintain, simply for the fact that your story has to all happen like in this eye line. You can't jump across to another town, another timeline, or anything like that. It's really tricky, and it's really hard with first person to not slow down and document every step from the living room to the car in the driveway. You have to learn how to cross time in first person, which is tricky, of course. Michaela, you're asking, when have I snagged somebody else's voice to use, or their diction pattern, or whatever you want to call it, in a novel? I've done it. I kind of did it in this one, Night of the Mannequins. It just came out in September. It's a kid. And I did it, the first time I was aware I was doing it was a novel called Flush Boy. And I was in Minnesota or somewhere catching a ride from somebody, and I was in the front seat, and her 14 or 15-year-old son was in the back seat, and he was kind of saying stuff to us every once in a while. And the way he spoke and the way he came at the world completely was fascinating to me. So I went right home and wrote a novel, Flush Boy, about a 15, 16-year-old kid working the window of his father's drive-through urinal. And so sometimes I think you can't abscond with somebody's voice, but more often you have to like meld 3 or 4 people together,
No, that makes total sense to me. And the characters have to come alive on their own. And we do have a specific question about character of, do you have to plan your characters to the same degree as your mystery plots, or do they happen more organically?
Well, I'll start again. So I don't plan my characters in a way I think the viewer is asking. I think about them a lot. I think about their speech patterns, as Stephen is saying. I think about their history, their backstory. I sometimes will sketch out a lot of notes that don't necessarily make it into the manuscript itself. But I don't know that I fully plan out a character. I have noticed that as I'm writing, sometimes what comes into my head, they surprise me. They act in ways that are different than what I expected. And so I've been doing this for a long time. And then I discovered that there's actually a writing teacher, Don Moss, who has categorized this. He says second order motivations. So again, for emerging writers, don't always have your characters do the expected thing. Have them do something different and something surprising. And that sometimes has to happen organically. And so, I think that's a good tip, because if they're too predictable, human beings are so rich and complex. So have them surprise us. But I'll again turn it over to Stephen.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. When your characters start doing things that derail your plot, that's when your novel actually comes alive. I feel like, when they make their own decisions, like when one of my characters asks another character a simple question, like, where were you, 3 years ago on this certain Tuesday? And for no reason at all, they lie, then that is when this thing becomes fascinating, and yeah, so I don't plan out character stuff at all, but I do agree with David that everything about a character doesn't make its way on the page. There's a lot of stuff off to the side, and that it's like a strange attractor, like if you're talking physics. It has a gravitational effect or pull on what's happening on page, and we don't see it directly, and but it's completely controlling all the same.
No, I thank you for this short little mini masterclass on craft. I think that I and a lot of other people are very fascinated, just about the process and seeing how it all comes out. And this question specifically for David about winter counts and this idea of, it's been said that you are writing native noir, but then winter counts has transcended it. Do you plan to continue? Obviously, you mentioned another book with Virgil, but do you plan to continue this genre, or do you want to explore other genres with a native voice?
Yeah, well, thank you for that wonderful question, the compliment. So I want to be clear here. That quote comes from a wonderful review in the Los Angeles Times.
Mm-hmm.
I did it from Paula Woods, this wonderful writer herself. And the title of the review was like, Weiden invents native noir and then transcends it. Well, I was embarrassed by this because I certainly did not invent native noir. If anyone would be Stephen Graham Jones, I would say probably, at least in the first version of All the Beautiful Sinners, he rewrote it, the second one, and turned it into a thriller. But this one, I've argued in print in my scholarly work that this is a native noir. I did not invent native noir, and I don't know that I've transcended it. Am I planning to write in other genres? Yes, indeed. So I do have a children's book out, and my children's book publisher is begging me for another one. But after I get done with the next Virgil book, I have a couple of ideas, and I probably will be writing some creative nonfiction. I have a couple of essays out there. I've got one in the literary journal Shenandoah that's free to read about my grandmother's time at the Carlisle Indian School. So the boarding schools were these terrible things. If folks don't know, 40% of Native kids for about 70 years were stolen from their parents without consent and shipped across the country to these terrible boarding schools where they were beaten, sexually abused, often not allowed to practice their culture or spirituality. My grandmother was one of them, except I found this trove of letters from her where she loved the school. And so my narrative in my head of my grandmother as like this great rebel and resistance fighter against the boarding school, she loved it. And so I kind of kept a secret for a long time. I was ashamed of her, ashamed of it, ashamed of myself for being ashamed of her. So I wrote an essay in Shenandoah. And finally, I just said, I'm just going to be honest about it. So I wrote an essay that I published in the literary journal Shenandoah about coming to terms with my grandmother's love of this native boarding school, and then realizing that she'd been brainwashed and it was propaganda. So I have a number of ideas for other creative nonfiction essays. And so I suspect that is a project that is on its way as well. So thank you for that great question.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I would love to continue this conversation. And it's something that I feel like honestly, I could have just listened to the both of you keep chatting all day. I felt like such a nice fly on the wall on like a coffee date between the two of you. It was so nice to hear. So thank you both for your honesty. Thank you for the insight onto craft and also just continuing to bless us with your stories. And we're so grateful for that. It's highly important, but you guys are just so good. It sounds lame for me to say that, but it just really is very true. Because as I told Stephen last time, his book was really an eye-opener for me into horror and thriller in general. And then I wasn't a big crime reader, and I picked up Winter Counts. And so thank you for expanding my reading, and I hope that other readers follow suit. So, well, I want to give you both a chance to remind people where they can find you online, who are you, about your book coming out, so that they can order copies at tatteredcover.com. So Stephen, will you kick us off, and then we can end with our author of the hour?
You can find me on Twitter, SGJ72. You can find me at StephenGrahamJones.com, and that's it.
He's also the author of The Only Good Indians, and you can
yeah,
watch that on you can watch our release event on YouTube and order it on tatteredcover.com because it's really good. And David?
Well, I just want to, one more time, thank you for choosing my book. Thank you, Tattered Cover, for being such a wonderful presence in this community. Thank you, Stephen Graham Jones, for being really one of the good guys in the literary world. And, there are plenty of bad ones, and this is one of the good ones. So thank you for taking time here. As to where folks can find me, my website is davidweiden.com. I'm on the Twitter, I'm on the Instagram, and so I'm just really honored that the book is out there, and it's really striking a chord. 30,000 copies have been sold, and I'm hearing I'm just really thrilled and honored that people are liking it. So everyone who's read it and enjoyed it, thank you so much.
And I'm McKaylee with Tattered Cover. I thank you guys again for spending your Thursday evening with us. You can purchase both of these lovely authors' books at tatteredcover.com. Thank you for continuing to support local independent bookstores. Maybe for dinner tonight, you can shop local and get from a local local restaurant here in the Denver metro area. We really appreciate your support. Stay safe, everyone, and happy reading. You two will stay on. We'll just end the feed here. Bye, everyone.